Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a very specific, highly valuable goal: how you can consistently and confidently pass your English writing exams. Whether you're tackling the ESB ESOL Skills for Life Level 1 exam or really any intermediate English writing assessment, we're going to break down the exact marking criteria that assessors use. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a foolproof, step-by-step formula, literally a blueprint that takes the guesswork totally out of the equation.
Ever stared at a blank exam page in a complete panic? Yeah, we've all been there. You sit down, the clock starts ticking, you stare at that empty space, and suddenly your mind just goes completely blank. It's a totally universal anxiety. But what if I told you that passing these exams isn't about waiting for some sudden burst of creative inspiration? No way. It's actually about shifting from that state of panic into a highly predictable, logical blueprint. Once you understand exactly what the examiner's rubric is demanding, that panic just kind of evaporates. Writing your answer becomes as logical as, say, assembling a piece of flat-pack furniture.
So, here's the game plan we'll be following today to build your perfect exam response. We're going to cover decoding the writing task, the power of planning, executing the final draft, mastering tone and style, and finally, the SPAG inspection.
All right, let's dive straight into Section 1, decoding the writing task. And your very first job here is to read the prompt carefully. Okay, picture yourself right there in the test environment. Let's say it's the ESB Level 1 exam. You've got an hour and 30 minutes on the clock. Now, it's going to be incredibly tempting to just start writing immediately, right? Just to save time. But absolutely do not do it. You have to force yourself to read that prompt 2 or even 3 times, nice and slow. Interpreting the rubric is absolutely your crucial first step.
The big takeaway here is that you've got to identify 4 key elements before you even think about putting pen to paper for a single sentence. First, what's your purpose? Are you complaining or are you describing something? Second, who's your audience? Is it a formal letter to a manager or a casual note to a friend? Third, what's the format? And lastly, and honestly, this is absolutely critical, what are the 3 to 4 mandatory bullet points listed in the prompt? Listen, if you miss even one of those mandatory coverage points, you're losing vital content marks, and that's no matter how beautifully you write the rest of it.
Moving right along to Section 2, the power of planning. Guys, this is exactly how you earn some really easy marks.
A shockingly high number of students just skip the planning box entirely. And honestly, that's a massive mistake. You've got to think of the assessor as a point-giving machine. Using the planning space with this exact sequence, writing the title, noting the format, planning 3 to 4 paragraphs, and drafting a closing statement actually earns you points before you even draft the final piece. Assessors are actively looking for a recognized planning format, like a list or a spider diagram. They literally award specific marks just to see that you can organize your ideas logically.
So with our foundation firmly poured, it's time for Section 3, executing the final draft. This is where we really start to build out the details.
Now, to build those details effectively, we have to embrace what I like to call the boringly detailed example paradox. See, examiners do not want abstract poetry. Not at all. They want highly specific, concrete facts. Simply writing, "the phone is bad," gets you absolutely nowhere. Instead, you need to write something like, "the mobile phone has several deep scratches on the screen, and the battery only lasts for 2 hours, even though it was fully charged." See the difference? You're proving to the examiner that you can fulfill a real-life purpose by giving them concrete facts, dates, and direct impacts.
Check out this sentence right here. You absolutely must include at least one complex sentence just like this one to earn that vital C mark from the examiner. Believe it or not, in the marking criteria, assessors literally annotate your script with a C when they spot a properly executed complex sentence. This single-sentence structure is a non-negotiable requirement if you want to hit those higher marks. And how do you build those complex sentences? By using connectives. Words like although, because, therefore, as a result, or even though. These specific words are essentially trigger words. They prove to the examiner that you can logically link ideas together. Look, you don't need to write an entire essay filled with complex, widening thoughts. You just need to deliberately drop in these connectives to link up those boringly detailed examples we talked about earlier. It shows structural maturity, and it absolutely guarantees you'll hit that grammatical requirement. All right, moving right along to Section 4, mastering tone and style. This is where we make sure your language perfectly matches your intended audience.
Honestly, getting your tone wrong is one of the easiest ways to throw away marks. You always need to verify if your imaginary reader requires a chatty, personal tone or a polite, business-like approach. Let's say the prompt asks for a formal complaint to a company.
If you start using contractions like I'm instead of I am, or you casually sign off with cheers, you are going to get heavily penalized. Formal means polite, writing out the full words and using structured openings like Dear Sir or Madam. Informal, on the other hand, allows for a casual hi and how are you? Just remember to match the register exactly to what you identified way back in step 1.
Finally, we've made it to Section 5, the final SPAG inspection. This is all about checking your errors in the crucial last 5 minutes of your exam. And by the way, SPAG just stands for spelling, punctuation, and grammar.
2. Yep, that shockingly low number is the maximum amount of grammar or punctuation errors you're allowed to make in your final version for longer tasks. Just 2. Think about that. If you forget a capital letter at the start of a sentence, or you mess up a subject-verb agreement 3 times, you actually risk failing that entire section of the criteria. And that's even if your ideas are absolutely brilliant.
And 3 is the absolute maximum number of spelling errors they permit, which is exactly why having a ruthless, uncompromising self-checking routine is completely non-negotiable. The examiners are specifically hunting for commonly misspelled words, things like received, disappointed, or inconvenience. So you literally have to guard those last 5 minutes of your hour and a half just to hunt down these tiny, sneaky errors.
I highly recommend you just memorize this checklist. Run through it systematically during those final 5 minutes, and it will protect your hard-earned marks. Read every single sentence individually. Actually ask yourself out loud, well, maybe in your head during the exam, does this make sense all on its own? Is the verb tense correct? Do my sentences start with capitals and end with full stops? And critically, did I definitely include that complex sentence we talked about? This kind of systematic review, that's exactly what separates a passing paper from a failing one.
So are you ready to apply this exact blueprint to your very next practice exam? Listen, consistent, repetitive practice with this highly formulaic method basically guarantees success. Take these techniques and start building your perfect response today. You really don't need to be the next Shakespeare to pass an English writing exam. You just need to follow the rules, logically plan out your structure, use those concrete examples, and ruthlessly check your SPAG. So the next time you're sitting there facing that intimidating blank page, I want you to ask yourself, are you going to let it paralyze you? Or are you going to confidently execute the blueprint? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Get out there and happy writing.